Hey guys, my host Game here. Welcome back to the final dungeon ranking video. I know you guys have been, I know some of you have been waiting for this, and I have too. I've been so excited to make this video to show my top 20 dungeons of all time. So I think these dungeons are going to be very controversial for multiple different reasons, but I will stand by these choices until my dying breath because I think these dungeons are really cool, starting with the Shrine of the Storm. The Shrine of the Storm really hit its mark on where I was going with this. I know a lot of people hated it, and if that's because you had people who had no idea what to do, which is going to come up again to another BFA dungeon actually later on. But if you hated it because no one had no idea what to do, or like if your groups kept disbanding on the second boss, which is awful. The second boss is awful with all the avoidable tornadoes and the interrupt sales going on. It's just doing that boss to not have really good memories. But what did was pretty much every single other boss. You have a giant water elemental that had lots of charges, and they were knocking people off the platform, which was always funny to see. It got me really engaged with that boss. And then it splits into three, which is even cooler. So you're fighting three of them, that means you're fighting three charges, which will probably not one-shot you, but, you know, one charge can lead into another. Then you got the second boss, who cares about the second boss. And then you got Lord Storm Song, which I thought was a really, that was a really good addition to the, it was a really good addition to the Shrine of the Storm, because it's all about the Lord Storm Song and his corrupted Tide Sage and such, and his mechanics are really cool. The thing about the orbs was a bit weird, I think, because at points there would be a time where you would run into, or you get the mind control, and then you have to run into the little orbs. Usually about 4 of them would break. I think we've had people break 12 orbs, and they're still not free of the mind control, which is really, I think that's got to do with the damage scaling. I don't think that was a problem on like the higher Mythic Plus levels, but it certainly was a problem on the lower levels. Sometimes actually, sometimes there was a problem, sometimes it wasn't. So that was a bit weird, but it was a cool idea of a fight overall. And then you got the last boss, which in the forms of Volzit the Whisperer, the huge sort of faceless one with all the with the different phase mechanic, where you got your tank and healer got in one realm, and then you got all your DPS in the other realm. You got to kill the ads, which I thought was really cool, and something I never found boring. There's all sorts of challenges you can set, like killing both of the ads before they can heal, and it sort of prepared you for the Crucible of Storms fight, because Crucible of Storms, the first boss, the Restless Cabals, had those similar things going on, and same with Unat actually, so that was really cool. Siege of Borealis. Siege of Borealis was great. This is number 19th on my list. I love dungeons and raids where you're raiding capital cities, and boy does Borealis fit right as that category. It had a lot going for it as well. You got the faction differences, like the first boss is different for each faction. So if you're Horde, you get Sergeant Bainbridge, and then you got Chopper Redhook for the Alliance. Some of its mechanics were different, like in terms of the chain hook. Like Chopper Redhook would do it immediately, and then the other guy would do it over a long period of time. I think that was kind of annoying. I don't know why they did that, but then again, I didn't play Horde much, so I didn't have to deal with it. I'd say the Alliance got it easier. And then you got the differences of mobs. Like the Alliance, you're facing off the Ashvane army, and then for the Horde, you're just fighting normal Corturians, which I think was a good touch. And then you got another awesome boss with the Fire the Cannon boss, the Dread Captain Lockwood. Although having a consistent slow going for that boss was kind of boring and dull, but it was an interesting idea of a mechanic. The third boss might as well not exist. And then the last boss was okay. The last boss got really intense, especially on that third platform when that tentacle had a lot more health than the others, which I suppose did make it fair for that boss, and it was really really cool fighting off against a kraken where you're not just straight up fighting it like Ozumats. People remember that there's a the giant kraken that you use or that you kill with cannons that are along the shore of Theramore. If anyone remembers that quest, so that was a similar sort of thing with this boss, and it didn't get very boring either. I know like Siege Brawlers did get quite boring for a lot of people, but if it was boring, it'll probably be in like 20 places down the list. So props to Siege Brawlers for making it a good dungeon. The next boss, is this my last Cataclysm dungeon? I think it is. It's the Stone Core. Stone Core is one of the best Cataclysm dungeons. Oh no, it isn't. There's one more I need to mention. But Stone Core is one of the best Cataclysm dungeons. I love the third boss with all the way he yells, "Break yourself upon my body," and the fact that all his mechanics still one shot today in Time Walk, and people still die to that. It just makes me laugh every single time with all the I think it's called a body slam or whatever the boss does. The worm boss though was really annoying, and that's what drags it down eventually. I love the setting of the dungeon. You're in like the real heart of Azeroth, the heart of Deepholm, and you've got all these Twilight cultist camps in the stone core of Deepholm, which I thought was a really really cool idea. Next one, I think it's based off its uniqueness and mechanics that have never been seen before realistically in a dungeon, and that will be the Court of Stars. Court of Stars is probably one of the most unique and engaging dungeons of all time. There are lots of different buffs or sort of things that can really move things along throughout the dungeon. I think my favorite one is being the lantern that turns off all the robots, which a lot of people didn't know until about midway through the expact, which would have been great, which would have been helpful to know earlier, but it was still really cool. Or was that even in the beginning? Because I think they might have added it later on. I think it was in 7.1? I can't remember. But it's all the other buffs are really really cool as well, and the way it requires you to have a certain, or for your character to be set up in some sort of way, like in regards to your race, your class, your professions. It's like they kind of designed it so pretty much any group that you've got can activate some sort of buff. It doesn't even matter if your things are professions or not. I think they can activate at least one buff in one way or another, which I thought was a really good touch, as well as the ability to poison the drink on the first boss, which was quite cool. That wasn't something that wasn't done for me a lot, because we didn't have a lot of people who could poison that vial, but it wasn't the end of the world if you didn't. It just saved you a bit of time. I didn't like the separating the mini bosses from the second boss. I thought that was really tedious, going back and forth, killing the mobs and such. I didn't mind finding the imposter through, which a lot of people actually really didn't like. But I like these types of mini games, especially in dungeons like Vortex Pinnacle very early on, because you just got to find someone that matches what the crowd is saying, although sometimes it was bugged and the information did not add up, which was kind of annoying, but ultimately it didn't really drag me down. The last boss is okay. It got pretty annoying on High Tyrannical. This is probably going to be a thing that's going to go on for this part of the video. The next dungeon, I know this was ranked quite low on Preacher's list, but this will be Black Fathom Deeps. Now, this is a bit of a weird dungeon because I prefer its current version of Black Fathom Deeps. I think it got changed in BFA or something. They added a lot of extra bosses, and I think they changed some of the bosses as well. The layout didn't really change as much. I'm just trying to remember what the bosses were like. I think when I was, because I didn't actually do this in a dungeon video or in like a dungeon finder as such, I was just going through the dungeon to see what had changed, because I noticed in the dungeon journal that that it got changed. So I think when I first walked in, the ogre trying to catch the crab boss, which was really, really funny, and then once you pulled him, the crab got away, and you can still kill the crab in that underwater little cave thingy. The executioner that's been running the entire dungeon just to stop at a particular point, I thought was okay. The dialogue he says there is, it's okay. The second to last boss in the form of the ascended water elemental, which is always cool to see. I love those type of creatures. I'd say the weakest part is the last boss, because I remember the old Akumai, which I believe is the pronunciation of it, being an actual Hydra. Now it's this like stupid sort of giraffe, and it has a head and then a long neck, and it's supposed to be a callback to Megira, if you remember, in Throne of Thunder. It was a similar Hydra to that. It just looked really stupid. It was just so dumb. Next one will be Strathholm. I think Strathholm is, I'd say, slightly better than Black Fathom Deeps. Strathholm had a lot going for it. There's lots of little cool references and callbacks, like the Frasiabi, the Postmaster, the Magistrate, some lore-heavy bosses like Balnazar and Lord Rivendare, which are really, really cool. And it does have that Rivendare's Death Charger, which is, in my opinion, one of the coolest ground mounts they have in this game. I'm not a big fan of the idea of like an undead Scarlet Crusade army. I think that just feels wrong. And then just going through the trapdoors, which got super old, super fast, to the point where some groups would even just go the long way round in both parts of Strathholm, which is not fun at all, because you still really don't want to do the sort of trapdoors unless you can sprint through it, which is good. Like if you had your whole party with a mass sprint or something, then you could skip it if you wanted to. But it was just so time consuming going the other way around, which didn't really put a smile on everyone's faces, let's be honest. Overall though, it is a really good dungeon. I love the idea that it's a whole burning city with a scourge roaming around. It kind of feels like this is what life would be like in the real world if there was like a zombie outbreak and humans are lost. You'd see lots of fire, lots of buildings on fire and ruined, and of course lots of undead roaming around. So overall it is still a good dungeon. And like I said in the last video, if I shit on a dungeon that's on this top 20, it's still a good dungeon. I'm just saying that there are pockets that could have been improved on or just removed. Next one is, I believe it is the last Burning Crusade dungeon. It is the Blood Furnace. The Blood Furnace is probably the best dungeon in the Burning Crusade, mainly because of its feel. It's like you are going in and you're descending further and further down instead of ascending further and further up, which is a cool idea. And all the mobs were very fun and interesting. I don't even mind the boss where you pull the lever and then wait for the trash to come out wave by wave, because back in Mythologic, that was surprisingly difficult for some reason, but I can't really remember doing Blood Furnace all the way back then, because it's just one of those dungeons where I just didn't do as much. I can't remember if this was a time walking dungeon. I don't think it is. And I always love hearing the voice acting of Magtheodon, especially back then when I didn't even know who the fuck he was. Then reading some lore videos about like what happened to the Outland, I was like, oh, now I kind of get why he's down there. Not a big fan of the last boss. He might as well just be one of those like unnamed NPCs with a lot of health at the end of the dungeon. That's just me. But Blood Furnace, that is really cool, especially the sort of escape route at the end, which is really, really cool. Next one, so the next one is a really good. I think this is the last Cataclysm dungeon, and it is Grimbatol. Grimbatol is easily easily the best dungeon in the Cataclysm, and it was insanely hard, and it was insanely good. All of the bosses were awesome, especially the first boss, which is just make sure you kill the purple ad away from the boss, otherwise he just starts annihilating your group. But when people don't do that and realize they're fucked, it's always funny. On top of people getting one shot by the, what's it called, the Blitz or something? He does like a charge and it one shots anyone that got hit. That's always super funny to see, even to this day. Because I think Grim Batol might have got added into the Cataclysm Time Walking roster, which is really happy because I could finally do that boss, or do that dungeon even. They also include a General John Grim boss where he's like a warrior. He switches weapons, he switches stances, and he's got different mechanics depending on what type of weapon he has, which is really fun. I remember trying to do the achievement on the last boss, killing 2 corruptors before they could reach the eggs, which is really hard. But overall, I have really fond memories of Grim Patrol. It was an amazing dungeon. Next one is Alderman. I really love Alderman. Same sort of preacher's idea. It's a bit of an unexpected pick for most people since how forgotten it may be for a lot of people, but I love the idea of a huge labyrinth-like dig site with loads of different directions, with loads of different options of bosses that you can kill. Like there's no matter what path you go to, it will lead to a boss eventually. And I don't mind the the run, or it's not like Dead Mines where you run to the dungeon through a maze, and it's not like it isn't like Dead Mines where you can just follow all the Defias people. You actually had to figure out where to go, and you can get lost in there, and it was fun trying to actually, when I was getting a recording for this video, I forgot that there was a map of the underground area just before you went to the dungeon, which was really cool. I think they could have added like an alliance version of the Lost Viking boss. Like you kill the first boss and then you head off into a sort of room that's sort of out of the way, and you find the 3 Vikings. There's they're kind of like quest guys that help you during the Badlands. And there was a Horde equivalent, but they just never added them into this dungeon, which was really weird. And I do like the idea of finding the 2 bits of stuff and then combining it to open that door. So that was really cool. Right, we're getting very controversial with these dungeon picks now. So the next one, I know a lot of people hate it, but I actually really love this dungeon. It is the Sanguine Depths. This was rated very low on Preacher's list as well, but I love the Sanguine Depths. Not only did this serve as sort of an Archway sort of dungeon where it was the sewers of the raid, but the whole place looks spectacular. Oh, why have I not? Anyway, yeah, the whole place looks spectacular. I really enjoyed the outlook that you get on the first and last boss. I think my only complaint with it is the ad on the second boss. I believe it does too much damage. The trash mobs are very difficult, which makes it even more fun. I think the reason why I like Sanguine Depths so much is because my main is a Venthier, so I was able to use the lanterns, which is always fun, especially in the Gauntlet area. So that was really good. Number 9, we're in the top 10 area now. Number 9, Cathedral, the Eternal Night. I know a lot of people hated Cathedral because of its tuning. For me, it wasn't bad. Even at 15, it was fine. The bosses were all really good. I love the first boss with all the ads coming in and blowing you up. I loved his model as well, just a big green tree that will crush the life out of you. I also like where you're fighting. It's like right below the Tomb of Sargeras. You're just in a little alcove above the Legion forces fighting the Legion. I also love the use of the Aegis Agama, and how you're using it to block the Shadow Orbs of Mephistroth. It was a cool idea. It was a bit buggy though, which did result in that sort of intermission with the bosses in there being far more difficult, especially when you add things like Quaking, Sanguine, and Tyrannical. But overall, it is a very good dungeon, very worthy of a number 9 spot. Number 8, Underrot. The Underrot is fine. It's just a lot of people who did that dungeon were some of the worst players I'd ever played with, because you had a lot of people who didn't have a fucking idea what went on in that dungeon. Whether that be just not interrupting, stunning stuff, or just general no knowledge of boss / easy trash mechanics. I still have good memories of the Underrot. I think this is my second favorite BFA dungeon. And that was the first dungeon that I tanked on a +10. Even though we had 88 deaths, I still had lots of fun doing it at the time. And shout out to my American boys who put up with my tanking. I think they're from the guild Homeland, which doesn't exist anymore. In regards to all the 4 CCs, I think it was okay. Because it encouraged people to use things in their toolkit, which they wouldn't normally do. But the amount of times that people did it just shows just how bad people were back in BFA. And that's when DPS got a lot more selfish for like the most stupid reasons. We saw a bit of that in the Freehold. It does happen in the Underrot as well. For like people who don't do what they're supposed to. I'd say my favourite part is the mushroom boss. I think Preach touched a bit on the mushroom boss. I love the idea of popping the mushrooms, and it encourages like really clever tanking positions to make sure all the mushrooms get popped if you don't have any cluster to cheese it. And the worst boss is just the second boss area. It's just a huge clump of trash that has to be killed in with it, plus it was 2 time consuming. Mr. Turner Scythe. Mr. Turner Scythe took a bigger and more unique approach to the Shadowlands dungeon scene, mainly in the form of the sort of the odd one out mechanic. I think a lot of people who didn't play the alpha or beta, like myself, were really confused about what it actually was that you were supposed to do. But after day 1, once people started to figure it out, once they were like, oh, now that I actually know what this is, I actually really like it. So I knew straight away this was easily going to be my favourite Shadowlands dungeon. Until 9.1. Going through the dungeon is still very, very cool and very fun. I will always have a good time in the Mr. Turner Scythe. That last boss is really good as well, with all the different mechanics. The staghorn mobs at the end are kind of annoying though, I'm not going to lie about that. I believe this is number 6, Blackrock Depths. Blackrock Depths was an absolute banger back then, and I still remember back in Wrath of the Lich King where people would do the entire dungeon because it is really cool. And I think this is the place where it has the most bosses out of all the dungeons, out of all the raids. Actually, I think this dungeon might have had more bosses than Siege of Orgrimmar, because Siege of Orgrimmar has been famous for being really, really long. Blackrock Depths had so many cool features about it, like getting the Shadowforge key to unlock the door to the other areas. That was a kind of a cool idea. I still miss the key rings from back then, pre-Cataclysm. Closing the huge stone gate to progress towards the inner city, towards the Grim Guzzler. And the Grim Guzzler itself, which was really, really cool. It's just going there, killing everyone, stealing all the bartender's stuff, which is always funny to do. But my favourite part was the vault, where you had the keys to unlock all the coffers, and all the golems activate because they don't want you taking their treasure and whatnot. So that was a really good thing. Number 5, Return to Karazhan. This was Preacher's number 1 dungeon, and it is number 5 for me. Keep in mind that these top 5, including Blackrock Depths, I don't really have anything bad to say about them at all. It's just a matter of like how fun it was, or based on what good memories I had going through these dungeons. But what I felt about Return to Karazhan is I think they took a completely different approach compared to the Karazhan raid, and it really feels like they upgraded Karazhan on a serious level to get to the dungeon that we have now. They kept some things similar, like some of the bosses. Then I suppose this is the case for everyone, where they felt really immersed after the curator, because what happens, like, if you kill the curator and then the door opens up and then the dungeon literally turns itself upside down. Literally, you're fighting on the ceiling, which is kind of weird, but it is also very cool and something that hasn't been done before or after that, which is really, really cool. And I think that's when Blizzard was starting experimenting with long dungeons, because that was their first mega dungeon, and it was still really, really good. And then something we've never really seen before, getting your whole party shrunk, criticized, and you're fighting this giant mana worm. And then once you kill him, you get resized and you can mass murder 15 of those worms at once, which is really satisfying. And the last boss is just amazing, jumping from ship to ship to ship while dealing with his very deadly mechanics. It was just an amazing experience for me doing it back then, and certainly with the hard mode with Nightbane in there. I remember doing that run so many times for people. I think I got mine in my 5th run, I think. And then I just always enjoyed tanking those runs because it was all about going fast, and I liked going fast, and it was easy. To be fair, it wasn't hard at all to do the hard mode. Number 4 is Shadowfang Keep. Shadowfang Keep has got to be one of the best dungeons of all time. Doesn't matter which version it is. I like some of the other remade vanilla dungeons. I do prefer it to Rook mode, like Scarlet Halls, like Scarlet Monastery, like the Dead Mines, because the heroic mode is just so much better. Baron Ashbury, honestly, yeah, Baron Ashbury was really hard. Commander Springvale was really hard, even though people skipped it, which was really sad. Lord Walden was really hard, and they really fit this dungeon together very well, especially if you've done the Silverpine Forest questline about the whole Forsaken versus Gilneas, which is probably one of the best storylines of all time for me. The mechanics seemed okay in general. The part where you're being mass choked and being brought down to 1 HP, then the boss heals you back up, or not, if you decide to interrupt the cast, was really scary, and it still is today. And that kind of stuff just makes a good dungeon. The next one, this is the only dungeon that I didn't have footage for because no one bloody does this dungeon anymore, and it is Tazavesh, and that really hurts me. The main reason why Tazavesh is number 3 for me is because of its mechanical side. Tazavesh introduced a ton of new mechanics, which paid off really, really well. Why is rated above Return to Karazhan. My personal favourite has been the geometry teleports on the 5th boss. Traversing through there is even really fun on hard mode, since that they really added a whole sort of hard mode to this dungeon. And then what else was there? Oh yeah, the throwing bombs into the air vents on the Melroot boss was really, really fun as well. And of course, who doesn't like the BAM performance? BAM performance is probably one of the, if not the best, dungeon boss so far in Shadowlands. I haven't tried the tank and healer instrument, whatever that is, but I'm sure it's quite similar to all the others. Hard mode was a decent challenge to get through, especially that last boss. While the mechanics are cool on it, try to bounce the balls or whatever, there was a load of damage rolling in, which was definitely added to the difficulty on that last boss in particular. Tazavesh also had a lot of other hidden things, like the logbox pit, having the trade prints down there. To me, they're sort of like the cherry on top. I don't think I have any much to say about that. The only downside I think of is that, yeah, no one does this dungeon anymore. Because this place is just even more jam-packed with stuff than Karazhan. And this was the only dungeon that wasn't on Preacher's list since the video was made before 9.1, obviously. Number 2, which may or may not reveal number 1 if you've been paying attention. The Dead Mines was Preacher's number 2 on his list, and it is number 2 on my list as well. They really got a lot of things right with the Dead Mines. And the thing that I like most is actually not about the dungeon itself, but instead that all of the bosses are introduced in the Westfall storyline, and then it ends in the dungeon itself. That's what I love about dungeons, where the bosses get a little one-on-one storytelling before you actually kill them in the dungeon. The Van Cleef story is one of my favourites, or one of my favourite storylines in the game, and their involvement with the Defias. More about the heroic mode, some of the bosses were okay and easy, they're still good. I think the best boss in there is probably Vanessa. The Vanessa Van Cleef on heroic mode, running that whole gauntlet was really, really fun. Facing off against all of the boss's fears and all their past lives or something. And the Foe Reaper. Oh, actually, no, before I go on to the Foe Reaper, on Vanessa, you're swinging around across the ship like a pirate. That was super super fun as well, dodging all the explosives and stuff. And then the foe reaper, just the fact that he's a giant harvester robot designed to rip you apart, which he definitely did back in Cataclysm. I remember wiping over and over again to the foe reaper. It was so spectacular. So what's my favorite dungeon? Which means we only have one dungeon left. My worst dungeon of all time is from Legion, and my favorite dungeon of all time is also from Legion. It's the only dungeon that has not been said, and to this date, and that is the Black Rook Hold. I cannot believe how good this dungeon turned out to be. If you know me very, very well, which I imagine a lot of people don't, my greatest and biggest all-time love for dungeons are the ones that start you out from the very, very bottom, then has you ascending a huge, long tower until you fight the big monster at the very summit. And the Black Rook Hold did that perfectly. And you're probably thinking, well, didn't Karazhan do that as well? Yes, but the Return to Karazhan at least took a different approach, where it started you off in the middle, because they wanted to. It was originally designed to start you off at the bottom of the stables area, and then work your way up to Lord Malchezaar, whereas the Return to Karazhan stack you in all different sorts of directions. So yeah, you literally started at the bottom, which are kind of like the catacombs or the burial grounds for all the Rook's guards. You're fighting this super awesome looking Marrogar crow looking thing, which was a really, really good boss. Then you're slowly ascending up the stairs with a big spider that pops out, which was a very nice touch. You head up to Ilisana Ravencrest, which is very interesting for someone like Kutalos Ravencrest to have like a demon hunter as a daughter. After we get into, my opinion, the favourite part of the dungeon, which is the dodge of boulders, the dodge the boulders sort of part, which is always fun to do. It's always fun to maneuver. You actually get 2 sets of these boulders, and then after the second one, you kind of get this option to kill the little mobs that has been spawning the boulders and potentially killing your teammates, which is really, really cool. But we never did it, which kind of sucked. The idea of running all the Fel Guards up to the top was an okay idea, but it was fun as fuck to AoE them all and getting no aggro, because the tank aggro was a bit wonky. It wasn't like how it is now, for sure. Like, Blood DKs could do one Blood Boil and then all the mobs would never ever swap to the DPS again. I did like that. And then I really love the big brute near the top, where he smashes the ground and calls in all sorts of airstrikes in the form of bats flinging like fell shit everywhere. And then as you go higher and higher, you start to face off against Kutalis' elite in the form of those lances, which stun locks everyone for ages, which is frustrating, but, you know, fun at the same time. And then you get to the tippity top of the hold, where you face off against Kutalis Ravencrest with a surprisingly low health pool. And then when you get him down to 5%, his little buddy Latosius pulls a surprise bitch moment and turns into the huge monster at the top of the tower. And can I just say that Dantaleonax is one of the best dungeon bosses in the game, mainly because of its like rotating beams of death, which is visually astounding. Like, always had fun trying to rush against the maze. It's kind of like the tentacles that you see in Plagueful on Margot Stradama, but this one was so visually impressive. So loads of love for the Black Rook Hold for me. It will always be my number one dungeon of all time. So that is my entire list. It feels like I've ranked like 100 dungeons, and it's taken me forever to do it. And I think there pretty much are 100 dungeons in this game, although that's probably not the case. What really puts my top 5 where they are is for the good memories that I've had in them, and how fun they've been over the course of its expansion life cycle. And yeah, I know my list is different. I know that I probably shouldn't have rated Sanguine Depth, Shrine of the Storm, Underrot, the places where they are. But I really love these dungeons, and well, it is my list. So I'd be curious to hear your guys' favorite and least favorite dungeons in the comments. And I do have some other ranking videos that I am working on, so I'll get those out sooner or later. But we are approaching the Christmas period as of recording this, so who knows what will happen. So yeah, that is me ranking every single dungeon in World of Warcraft. I hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know what to say. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.